Good evening, everyone. I can't hear you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for making it here. And I know it's raining out there, so actually the numbers are more than we had expected. So thank you, really appreciate it. My name is Ian Ofula. I'm the founder and lead curator of this space that I'm trying to build. So you guys being here is such a validation. And as you can notice, this is not Shiro Moriuki. This is
Really? Me. The mic is okay. Really. My name is Tom Mukwana. I am an investigative journalist for Africa Uncensored. I've been a fan of this show. I wanted to show up the last 2 times. I couldn't, and somehow God made it work, and that time I'm here. So I'm excited to engage in a conversation with all you guys.
And the reason why this worked is because today we're having such a difficult conversation, and that is around the terrorism charges that young people are actually facing. And as you can imagine, when someone is branded a terrorist, almost no one wants to go around that. So it was very difficult to get people to come on board to help me put this session together. But Africa Uncensored, Siasa Place, and of course, Baraza Media Lab made this possible. Let's clap for them.
Asante. And as you might have noticed, the topic today is I am not a terrorist. We'll be having brilliant panel discussion here led by Ian, and I will be going around with the roving mic after that.
Now, let's get into what brought us here today, and that is discussing who a real terrorist is against who a patriot is. And that's because we've seen quite a number of people. We're looking at nearly 400 or more people who were arrested after the June 25th protests and the Sabasaba protests and charged with terror offenses. We shall meet some of them here today. But before that, I mean, a bit of humor is not too bad, right? The person that I want to introduce on stage is someone that I'm actually meeting for the first time, but I've seen online quite a lot, and I love what she's doing with her art. Justine is a stand-up comedian, writer, satirist, and political commentator. She's performed across the continent and is the creator of the political satire web series Cook with Justine. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Justine.
Hey everyone, how are you guys doing? Let me stand here because I want to be closer. Just a quick question to the room. How many of you went to Maandamano? Can I get a woo? Nice, this is a good room. Yesterday I was in a room where no one went to Maandamano and I was pissed. So I remember the first day I went to Maandamano, I was, what do they call it? What is this word? Naive, you know. I was out there and I was like, we're gonna end this bill today. And I was standing there with my friends and I was like, if they shoot me today, my landlord doesn't win. You know, like I was so locked in. So we are standing out here in front of Nation Center. We're singing. I don't remember what we were singing, but it felt patriotic. And I'm holding my phone and I'm recording, and a tear gas canister was thrown. It hit my hand and I didn't drop my phone. That's how I knew I was poor. Like even in a panicking situation, I have to like maintain, because I just knew like if anything happens to my phone, I don't have a recording for tomorrow, I don't have rent, I will have to move out of my house. I was like, okay. And one of the things that happened during that particular situation, I turned into like a military vet. I was with my best friend and like we were running away from the tear gas and I was like, put your head down. And I'm like, who is this? Yeah. Like that was coming from me. And I realized something, like I really love being in the Nairobi CBD. I think it's one of my favorite things. And I love walking on River Road. Like River Road is kind of like a passion of mine. And I know some of you River Road users are judging me, but like I love River Road because I think I knew I loved my best friend because I was texting her while I was on River Road. Like texting. If you've never been to River Road, think of a place that has a challenge for stealing. You know, like that's what River Road is. So I was texting my best friend and someone just ran. They grabbed my phone and started running. And I panicked and instinctually I just went, Mwizi! And the guy who was walking next to me was like, Enyewe Ruto must go. And I was like, wrong person, we need to catch this one. So we ran down River Road, we caught the thief. It was very romantic. We caught the thief, we got my phone back. So I'm encouraging more people to go to River Road, you know. Go get your phone stolen, make a friend, you know, that's That's what we should be doing as a country. I think that's a good way to end tribalism. Just go down there, no one cares, you know. And I also recently experienced something called white theft. I know it's gonna be uncomfortable for a few minutes. White theft used to be called colonialism, but like they rebranded. Like it's more elaborate now. So I went on holiday with a couple of friends of mine. Like I saved every single penny and then I full lizard. That's how I was able to go. And when I went to this vacation, I was having like a good time. We were staying in a giant house with a bunch of people I've never met. And a white American man stole my Apple charger. And I was mad because I was like, you come from where this comes from. Like, where are you stealing? Where are you stealing from me? So actually it's China. So maybe, you know, maybe he's disconnected from the source. So I was like, I'm getting this charger back. You know, like I can't allow him to steal because what hurt me, he didn't just steal from me. You know, he was stealing from the kids of Congo too. And that was my biggest beef, you know. So I was like, I'm getting this charger back for the kids of Congo. So I walk up to him and was like, give me back my charger. It was very embarrassing, you know, like I was not prepared to fight or anything. And then what he did next was very amazing. He brought out his black girlfriend. They fought me and they kept my charger. And I realized something. This guy was not a racist. He was just a thief. And that's progress, you guys, that's progress. So proud of them. I was like, more people should do interracial dating. If that's the end result, I was proud of them. And I also used to live in a bedsitter. I'm not gonna ask for any bedsitter leavers in the room. I'm gonna respect you. But if you don't know what a bedsitter is, think of it as a bathroom that became ambitious. You know, like, so I used to live in one of these things, and the day I moved into this building, I was excited. I was like, this is awesome. I've saved up my money. I'm going to move in. And the day I moved into this bedsitter, there was no water in the entire building. And I was like, maybe this is how people in Langata feel. You know, like they need to be given water. So the next day I had to go to work, and I was freaking out because I couldn't shower. There's no water. And I knock at my neighbors, and my neighbor was very nice. She was like, yeah, you can shower at my place. And I shower, and remember when I moved into this bedsitter, I bought everything on offer. I bought buckets, curtains, I bought boxers, panties were too expensive. So I buy all these things, and when I'm showering, I leave one of my boxers in my neighbor's house. And when I come back in the evening, she's arguing with her boyfriend, and like they were kind of going through a breakup process, and like the boyfriend was like, who is this skinny guy you're sleeping with? And I was like, yes, I do present as a skinny guy. But I didn't interfere, you know, I let them break up because no one should be starting a romance in a bedsitter, you know. Because people who live in bedsitters are very delusional. They're like, love lives here. I'm like, where? Your bed is next to the gas, it's next to the toilet. Where are you putting the love, you know? So my encouragement to the boxers led them to break up. And I really don't want them to break up in the long run. You know, I want them to meet later in their lives when they have more space in their lives. You know, like just walk around room, love room, bedroom, you know, like that's what I want for them. Apart from bedsitter living, I also recently was in Uganda. Anyone who's ever been? You guys have never been to Uganda? Okay, if you've never been to Uganda, if you've been to Kakamega, same vibe. You know, it's the exact same vibe. And I absolutely loved being in Uganda because I would look at the headlines, and one day I saw this headline that said, Ugandans protesting corruption. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you guys encourage fiction writing over here. This is really good. And I also read like a story of an MP who, she was running for like the member of parliament position, and when she was running, she donated an ambulance, and they didn't vote for her, and then she took back the ambulance, and I was like, more politicians should be petty, you know. And then I realized something. Maybe that's why they haven't gotten rid of their president. He's gonna go with the airport, you know, like you can't take such huge risks. Lastly, before I leave, I am a feminist. Any feminists in the room? Nice. Usually that's the energy feminists are tired. Like it's energy is over here. I'm also a feminist on Twitter. You know, that's where I thrive. I don't know about real life. Uh, I'm a feminist on Twitter and I love it. Usually you'll see things, people say, feminists are men haters. And I'm like, feminists are not men haters only. We can hate everyone. It's about equality. Yeah. I love it. So the problem with being a feminist online is usually I love arguing with women because that's feminism, you know, like don't like equal dishing. So I was arguing with this lady. I don't remember what we were arguing about, but then we were arguing and then someone wrote in our thread, cat fight. And I realized something. When women fight, it's usually called something demeaning like a cat fight. But when men fight, they have really cool names. They either go with, it's a duel, or a revenge, or an election. And I'm like, this is just brilliant. So I'm encouraging more people to fight online. So the thing that I'm a big feminist because today I saw a woman boda rider. I don't know if you guys have ever seen one. Yes, I saw a woman boda rider and I was like, I'd never seen one. She was on the wrong side of the road. She was endangering her passenger's life. And I was like, you go, queen, that's feminism. And then she just kept going and she fell into a ditch with her passenger. And I realized maybe this is what they mean when they say women can't stay on top. Thank you guys so much. That's been my time.
Another round of applause for Justine, guys. Yeah, and Justine, manze, Ian and I are from Kakamega, manze. Usiseme hivyo bana. But to move on from that short break of laughter, I had an interview with Melvin Togo, who's part of the audience, by the way. Melvin, you can wave. Melvin is a lawyer and human rights advocate. We had a conversation about the conversation we're about to have right now. It's a brief interview, but I started off by asking her how the Prevention of Terrorism Act is being used against protesters right now.
The government has increasingly misused the Prevention of Terrorism Act to frame peaceful protesters as threats to national security. We've seen young people being arrested for simply expressing dissent and some of them for just existing. Some of the people we have in these cases were just existing at their workplace. Probably because you work near a police station that was banned, or maybe someone in the police force just thinks that because you're a Gen Z, you deserve to be framed because the protests were organized by Gen Zs.
You probably had access to the charge sheets of the accused in these.
Yeah, yes.
How does it look like, and what does the government allege?
The allegations are mostly that these people burnt a government vehicle, that these people burnt a local somewhere, or that these people beat a police officer somewhere. And when you look at what they have in terms of, because the charge sheet also lists the evidence and the witnesses they're meant to use, the charge sheet only lists the police officers. It's always an IO or maybe even 16 police officers who are coming to give evidence. And even the evidence that you're receiving, it's statements from police officers. Looking at what exactly the POTA is supposed to be used for, you do not see it in the charge sheet. And that's why I said misuse, because it's supposed to even, it's supposed to list, or rather to even indicate that there was some intent. There was intent to cause some harm or to cause terror among the people, but it doesn't list that. What it does list is maybe a reaction that occurred. For instance, the charge sheet for people who are charged from Mawego for the burning of the police station. Mawego is where Albert Ojwang comes from. And this, you see, it's a reaction. It was a reaction from the people. It was a reaction from the young people because they felt that they were not heard. So when they say that burning of a police station, it is a reaction because that police station has been there. Why was it being burned that time when people had called for state accountability, stop to police brutality, and then suddenly people take Albert Ojwang's body, they go to the police station and even burn it?
Can we speak about the history of the POTA Act, as you've called it? What was it, or what was the intent?
the intent was to charge and to prosecute violent extremists. Remember that it came into force when we were dealing mostly with the Al-Shabaab attacks. And even Kahawa Court was almost specifically curated for that purpose, that it was supposed to be dealing with people who are causing national insecurity. It was not supposed to be used for Kenyans who are trying to express themselves politically, Kenyans who did not agree or who are calling for government accountability. Because let me paint this picture, Tom, that since the enactment of that act, we've only had less than 12 people being convicted under it. But suddenly, in 2 months, we have 75 young Kenyans from age 17 to 30 being charged with terrorism. That should sound an alarm. That should tell you something. I think what even you guys are doing here is very important. What we are doing at 50 plus million Kenyans is very important because you go silent. That has been the aim. You remember the Cabinet Secretary for Interior said that, when you're facing these charges, you will be alone. And because that was the motive from the beginning, when we stand up and when we speak up for each other, we will see a change. I mean, democracy, the cost of democracy is eternal vigilance. We can't be silenced. We can't let this keep going. We have to change the narrative. And even as we move forward now, we have to look at the Constitution itself and this POTA and see where are the loopholes. Why is it so easy for them now to come and use it? Are there loopholes that we haven't closed that now make them use it against peaceful protesters and ordinary Kenyans?
From 12 people, I think Melvin was from 12 people in 10 to 13 years to 75 people in a few months. That's something that you should be worried about, but we'll get the answers as to why that is happening right now in the conversation that follows this documentary that Ian has produced. He weaves together the story of young Kenyans who are protesting and drawing an unlikely line between them and actual terrorists, people who rain terror on Kenyans at Westgate Mall, Dusit D2 in the maybe past 10 years. It's slowed down now, but the same act that Melvin spoke about is being used against young Kenyans. But interestingly, Ian was there at both events. He was there when people were protesting, and he was there when Westgate was attacked. And he put together this story for you to see.
Wanadanganya wanatupiga tear gas and they want to kill us. We do
not even have to.
They are just gagging us.
Criminals pretending to be peaceful protesters can rain terror against the people.
I was on these very same streets covering the June 25th protest anniversary when I exposed goons beating civilians in front of police officers who at that time didn't do anything. Now that video went viral, and I remember a couple of elected officials reposted my video and said that journalists like myself need to be charged with terrorism for inciting chaos. And I found that as ridiculous, for lack of a better word, because I am not a terrorist. But for me, it was just a simple tweet. Tens of others actually around the same time were charged with terrorism charges, and their lives have actually never been the same again.
Tension continues to mount in Kiambu County following the detention of Wanjiku Piga, the DCP National Youth Coordinator.
So that is the information you give young people. Mkiambia wenda chukue kura, unawaambia kwenye IBC constituency offices because we have a lot of first time voters, 18 and above. So hawajui kwenye wataenda kuchukua kura. So muambie this is the building when wataenda kuchukua kura. Tunasikiza ground. We scrubbed pavements, we washed blankets for wakubwa.
Yeah.
We used to call them madams. They're called madams.
Yeah.
Yes, and fetching water from far and bringing them back.
So when you're doing all these chores in the in the prison, were you thinking, how did I get here?
Yeah, especially being in Langata Maximum Prison and in the uniform. Oh my God. You're like, my God, I'm in a uniform. My God, I'm incarcerated.
Yeah.
And you see, you meet other women who are incarcerated too, and they're like, oh, I'm here for 15 years, I'm here for, and then they're like, oh, you're the guys with the terrorism charges, oh, you'll be here for 15 years.
When I mentioned to someone that, as I was looking for your contact, and I said, I'm probably going to be speaking to Wanjiku, they said that actually an ambassador from whatever country they didn't want to name was supposed to be on the same panel with you.
Yeah.
You seem like you have an idea, or no?
Yeah, I know.
And they decided they're not going to be on the same panel with
sure.
Wanjiku because you've
I'm
been
a
labeled.
terrorist.
What did you think of that?
The first time I asked myself, so this is how my life is going to be. And I'm afraid of my family, I'm afraid, to even date. Because, now this is another person coming into your life, and now they also, their life changes for them. So it's made me feel like just become a loner.
Have you had a moment where you realize I'm actually being followed or I'm under surveillance?
Yeah.
How so?
On my phone.
Yeah.
They tap my phone. They tap my mother's phone as well.
How do you know they're tapping?
My mom tells me I can hear people on the other end. And also another thing that I went through after my terrorism charges is that I ran a CBO and my funding was withdrawn.
What's a CBO for someone who doesn't know?
This is a community-based organization that tends to work around the lived realities of the community that we live in.
So how much did you lose in funding for the square reason that you are labeled as a terrorist?
I lost 3.5 million. And that was, an initial funding. We were to work together as we built up to 2027.
Yeah.
But they withdrew.
For what reason did this NGO say they're not funding you anymore?
Oh, they said the process has been competitive and unfortunately you're not shortlisted. It was hysterical because I had gone through all the processes and we had done inception meetings and we had done even the do no harm training.
So you're just about to sign the contract and then they pulled back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are terrorists. I think they are terrorists, not criminals.
Today is the 21st of September 2025. That means it's 12 years since the Westgate shopping mall attack. I remember I was just 21 at the time and I was an intern, and that was basically the first story that I ever covered. I was at KTN at the time, and it's also the very first time that I came to understand the acts of terrorism, the acts of a terrorist, and the impact it had. I remember making a live phone call report and saying, I can confirm to you that at least one person has died. And that has never left me. I cannot imagine what people who are there or who have lost someone, some of whom are going to come here today, actually experienced.
We come here each and every year, at least to come and remember Mary Gloria Atamba Selete, who was my younger sister, a best friend. I remember that day very well because both of us, we've been retailers, and I was at TRM, somebody's store, just a personal store. And for her, she was working for Little Souls at Westgate. So we had an on communication. It's 11, she hasn't called me. And I called her more than 10 times. Then a colleague of mine comes from upstairs and she's like, stop calling your sister, put everything down. Westgate is under siege. I come to Westgate, to the rescue tent, look at the lists, other friends of mine. Everybody is dashing everywhere to the hospitals. Morgue was the thing I never wanted to hear. Yeah. My mom, she fainted actually, and on a Sunday evening, it's now when she came to realize that she was on a hospital bed. And again, she was shattered after she finds her child lying lifelessly, shot very badly.
Walking to one of the trees that you planted. Whose tree was that?
That tree is in memory of Ruhila Datlisi.
Yeah.
She was a radio presenter.
Yeah.
And in fact, this symbolizes 2 lives lost because she was expecting at that time.
Yeah.
I was there for a cooking competition at the rooftop of the mall. And, you know, my mom and sister were there to support me. Friends and family had come through to support us as well. The competition didn't even get to start because the siege had broken out. So
yeah. I chatted with you before we started rolling this, and you said something about survivor's guilt. What's that, and how does it come about?
It's a complicated thing because, like I mentioned, the people who came to support us at the competition, I had a lot of friends and quite popular. So there's people who come out there, and it was like one of my mom's friends. In fact, she really admired my sister and I, and she sat in that exact spot to support me. And, you know, to think that that lady died on that chair where my mom would have been. If maybe I didn't have those people come to the mall, they would still be alive today. It's kind of...
That is such a heavy burden to take on yourself.
It is.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for that. In modern day Kenya, young people your age, I won't ask your age, you know, never ask a woman her age. Yeah. People your age, I assume your age, have been faced with terrorism charges just for going out to the streets to fight for a better country, right? Yeah. Does that match to what a terrorist can actually do?
No. And it's wrong to just use the term so lightly. When, you know, when you think of terror, when you think of war-torn areas like Palestine, the situation today, for some people who have been in these situations, it may be triggering to see images like that, or, you know, but that's their reality. They're living through that terror. So if you want to know what terror is, you look at an innocent child's eyes and you see terror. And then the terrorist is the person who's inflicting that, causing that destruction without remorse, without the consequences, you know, and for their own self, you know, for their own agenda. It's wrong. And that's terrorism.
So I'm on my way to Kikuyu town, where a number of young people were actually arrested, and they were linked to cases of arson and destruction of government property. But interestingly was that their charge was terrorism. So let's just go and see how their life has changed since then.
Mimi nilitoka nyumbani kitu kama 6:40 kuna kuja kutengeneza rent yangu na kununua sapa. Juu wakati nilifika hapo kwa East je kwa hapa chini kiona kuja hivi nikamwambia ukijaribu kuendelea tena nakupiga. so ikabidi sana mimi, so I'm so young, ikabidi tu nisalimu amri. Asema
ulijaribu kuambia au kuwa umeenda maandamano? Wakasema nini?
Wakasema hataki kusikia hizo story, wasema hizo ni maneno za mamangu.
I reported to work as usual. So around 10-11 a.m. that's when demonstrations started. So we had to close. They were like forcing us. We were two, me and another dude. I didn't know him, but he was helping me. I was not feeling well that day, so he was the one helping me, you know.
So when they were arresting you, what did they say?
They point a gun at me. They tell me, if you run, we're gonna shoot you.
Siku hata nakula juu kitu kwanza, angalia familia wenye wajui pale niko. Juu nilikuwa nimekaa wiki mbili bila kupiga simu yote, bila any communication. Nimetupa chance mingi sana juu hiyo siku yenyewe nilikuwa nimepata sponsor fulani ya kuenda pale pengine, nilikuwa naenda USA. Nilikuwa nasomea mechanic. So kakuwa saa sitaenda, nitakaa hapa tu.
After like two weeks, unaenda court. Yeah, after like 2 weeks, unaenda court. It's draining.
Hii maisha ni magumu sana. Kama mimi mwenyewe lasile hiyo yenye tulikuwa kotini, nilitumia 700. Na kwa siku ukiangalia kwa siku, kuna wakati mwingine naenda selling nakosa ama napata. Kama 700 pia yenyewe hata nilifanya fuliza kwa simu yangu na zingine pia zenyewe nikaomba. Ila at least nifike wapi, nifike kotini.
Listening to them, you can tell they're still traumatized and dealing with the weight of what they went through when they were arrested. They've also either lost opportunities, lost their jobs, and they still have to constantly carry the weight of going to court every other time, and that just has a lot of weight on them.
Drawing the line between who a patriot is and who a terrorist is, it's up to you to actually see for yourself. And just like we always do for every edition, and every time we try to tell these stories, we bring the people who are in these documentaries to appreciate them, to meet them, and to just get to actually really understand what they're going through. And actually the three of them are sat here. Mariam, Wanjiku, and Brian, please stand up. Let's clap for them. First of all, I admire your courage to share your story. I know it's not easy. And you've obviously expressed whatever you're going through is not easy. I'll actually start with Mariam. Tom, you can give her the mic. Because one of the things that didn't make it to the documentary is the scars and the trauma that you constantly deal with, and you've been unable to go back to work because you are arrested when you're at work. Just tell us about that. Why has it been difficult to go back to work?
Hi guys. Can I stop you?
Yeah, sure, of course. Actually, you guys can come here.
I'm Mariam Ali, terrorist. So, because it happened so fast. I've lost friends. I've lost job. Ni kuanza zero, guys. Like kuanza zero. So
If you had a chance to speak to the government or anyone who's watching this today, what is the one thing you'd tell them?
I don't want to talk about the government.
You don't want to talk about the government. Very understandable. Bran, how have you been? How's your... You don't have to talk, actually. It's free space. Do you have anything to say? Let me leave it open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, all of you. Yeah, I'm Brian Duranino. I'm from Meru. Yeah, I'm not. Okay. Nasema hivi
Unaweza ongea kwa Kiswahili pia kama unataka.
Okay.
Uko sawa? Haya.
Okay, kwenye walewe Kiswahili at least. Mwenye at least atamwambia kile venye nilisema. Okay. Venye siku ya kwanza nimekuanzia wakati tulienda kustakiwa kwa as a terrorist, but I'm not a terrorist. Kitu kwanza nilitoka nyumbani kwenda kununua sapa na kutengeneza rendio. As venye umeona hapo. So, hiyo siku ati nilitoka ilikuwa kitu kama 7:30 hivi to 8 kinaelekea. So nilitoka job. So kwa ile wakati nilikuwa nasema bando maneno mengi iliache saa kuna mambo yote yenye yanaendelea ambayo serikali at least wanasumbana na raia. Nikaenda pale kwenda kununua sapa, hata sikufika kwenda kununua sapa. So sapa yangu nilikulia nikiwa ndani Kikuyu. Nilifika kitu saa 2. So nilijaribu kufanya communication yote hapo, haikuwezekana. So nikakuwa long story. So kitu kwanza kwa kutoka Kikuyu pengero hilo. Kwa hilo ilikuwa itu kama Thursday ili Friday tuingie virtual court. So after there tukapewa 14 days. Tukapewa 14 days hata sikuisha. Kuna nyali aje hilo wengine tukaingia Kiambu. Nilikuwa mmoja wao kuingia Kiambu na my sister.
Na Brian, ulikuwa unaniambia that ukiwa pale wakati ulikuwa umeshikwa, kulikuwa na wengine ambao walikuwa wadogo kuliko. Walikuwa na miaka ngapi?
Yeah. Tulikuwa na wengine wadogo mwenye alikuwa under 17 years. So, huyo 17 years hiyo kitu kwanza kushika mtu 17 years nikusema terrorist hiyo hata nikumwaribu jina. Hiyo ni kuharibia mtu jina kabisa. 17 years. At least ingekuwa terrorist, ijue kama mimi mwenyewe tu anatoka Meru kwa mpaka wa Somalia na huko kwingine upande mimi. Baadaye niuliza hata angani mwenye nishika singekuambia. Na nimekaa kwa mpaka kabisa. Hiyo tangu utotoni hadi leo.
Na ulienda kuchukua good conduct so that you continue with this opportunity ulikuwa umepata. Okay. Wakati ulifika pale kuchukua good conduct uliambiwa nini?
Okay, wakati nilishikwa kwenda pale tukachukulia kila kitu. Nilikuwa na opportunity. So nilikuwa nasomea Kakamega. Na wewe umesikia nimetoka Kakamega.
Mimi na Tom tumetoka Kakamega.
So nilikuwa nasomea Kakamega College. Kwa nimeambia brother hapa. So nilikuwa nafanya kazi ya mechanic. So kule tukupandisha akili, yani kupanisha masomo mingi kuwa na kujua kwingi. So hiyo chance ilikujia ghafla. My brother and my father sema nimsaidie. So anaweza kuja hapa niambia kijana, naona at least unaweza fanya kitu fulani, unaweza kuongezea elimu yako. Kwambia kuna shinda. Nilikuja huku as a hustling. Niliacha kila kitu kwa kamera, nikakuja huku kufanya hustling. My mother, my father hakuna hata mmoja alikuwa anajua. Nilikuja tu ghafla. Kila kupigana na rafiki simu. Unaanza pale fulani unaweza kuja, ngombe kuna shinda naweza kuja. So nikakaa pale kwa mwezi mmoja pekee. Wa pili inaelekea hata sikumaliza wa pili. Ndio sana nilienda before watisa tulitoka jela ngo committee prison. Tulitoka sana nikakuja sana nikachukua nini ile good conduct. Nilikuja hapo Huduma Center. Nitoka kama leo after 3 days nikakuja Huduma Center. Nikaambiwa bando fingerprints zako haziwezi tumika. Una kesi yenye umestakia na yenyewe na sio kesi ndogo hivi. So itabidi hizo fingerprint ijue venye utazitoa ili chukua at least good conduct. So hiyo opportunity kapata hiyo. Tukakaa tena after kuna wakati NYS walikuwa wanachukuliwa kwa alliance. So nikaenda nikajaribu tena. Nikaona kila kitu certificate kila kitu ziko. Kakuwa nayo good conduct pekee ndio inatashinda. Nikaenda nikajaribu tena. Nikakuja hadi Huduma Center. Kwanza hata nikuja mapema. Kama leo kesho nikiwa naenda kwa NYS kwenda kuchukuliwa. Nilikuwa naomba vizuri sana. Kwa hiyo nikaambia bando was qualify. Chance ya pili kapata hiyo. So as a Kama mimi mwenyewe mimi nilikuwa naomba kwamba kama inawezekana at least hizo fingerprints zitolewe, at least opportunity ya dhati ikitokea sikuje kupotea bure.
Pole sana. Please pass the mic to Wanjiku. Wanjiku, when I approached you and we were talking and you said this is the first time you were telling your story, why did you decide to open up about it?
Mambo ni one time. For me, because majorly politically aligned and the national youth leader for DCP, and already there's a certain angle people look at me with, and because I am a strong soldier for His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, and we know he's branded enemy of the state today. So people look at me with that lens, but they don't know who I have been before I was the national youth leader for DCP. And I've taken so much time to build my career as a youth leader in this country. I've really fought for the rights of young women and youth in Kenya. So I wanted to tell my story because I was brought immediately to the limelight. Immediately I was announced as the youth leader, and shortly after, I was incarcerated. So I wanted to tell my story from a very non-partisan point of view, and already donors look at me different. And I've worked with donors for so long. I've done so much work for the rights of women and youth in this country. And watching them ghost me was so hurtful. Was so hurtful because why would you leave me when I need you the most? I have walked with you this journey. You know me. Other people don't know me, but I need the people who knew me before to defend me, to defend who I am. And that's why I told you, I want to tell my story because Kenyan media too is aligned to state. I used to spend so much time in Kenyan media. Today you won't find me. They won't call me. Even when I call and say, I want to come and talk about this matter, they won't call me. So that's why when you told me, you invited me, I said, I want to tell my story, and that's why.
What does justice, as we finish, look like for you, Brian, and Mariam?
We defend justice. Nerima, we are with you in court every time. The other day, my PA told me, when I get to Kahawa law courts, I become a different animal. My defense is so up. They are the enemies for me. You call me a terrorist, and I'm not. I look at the DPP when they were sending me to Langata and Mariam here. We saw the DPP chat with state, and state asked them, I won't mention that person. Have you done as you've agreed? Are they going to prison for the next 6 days? And they said it is done. I have so much hate. For me, one time is so personal. They are so determined to fight young people. And every time I go to court, I'm just angry. And I don't want to leave my device. They have to have my device, and my device has access to the plans that I have for young people in this country on how we're going to register to vote. And I know that's what they want to access. They took my digital devices. Their digital devices they were given back. Mine, they still have it. They still tap my phone. They still track me. They still follow me. So for me, I don't think I'll find justice. I think I'll find justice in the next government. And the next government is what I'm working for, that believes in young people, that it is going to be made by young people. And it's young people who are going to free people like me who have a 15-year jail term on my head.
Sorry for what you guys are going through, and I appreciate for the courage to tell your story. Let's clap for them. And those stories are the reason why we came here today, to have a conversation about how did we find ourselves here, how can we get out of this same spot, and how can we ensure that a law like the Prevention and Terrorism Act 2012 is not being misused as we have seen. I'd like to invite our main guests today, people who are not strangers. I'm sure you've seen them either on the streets fighting for justice, human rights, or the spaces for young people like this. I'd like to start off with Nerima Wako. Nerima Wako is the Executive Director of Siasa Place. Her work focuses on youth engagement and empowerment and highlighting the erosion of the civic space and the mobilization, advocacy, and strategy for Kenya's democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, Nerima Wako. Next, we have Irungu Houghton, who's the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya. His work focuses on human rights violations, accountability, and for this panel, I actually thought it would be a good idea to have him here so to gives us an international perspective on the implications of the Prevention of Terrorism Act and what it means for Kenya and Kenya's democracy as well. Irungu Houghton. I think as I sit down, my first question is, how did you get here to a point where a law, and as we've had Melvin talk about, a law that was initially brought to protect Kenyans from terrorism acts, especially around 2012 and 2011 when Kenya invaded Somalia and there was a lot of terrorism acts. How did you get to a point where it's now being used around peaceful protesters? We'll start with Nerima. I think we might need to fix your mic, Irungu. Nerima, as you go.
Okay. I can only talk about how I got here. I don't even know. I was learning about POTA because of what's going on with Wanjiku and everyone else.
Yeah.
And I actually came in solidarity with Wanjiku. And then that's when we realized there were so many more young people who had been arrested. And I remember that day when we had gone for the court hearing, Honorable Nerima has also been at the forefront with a lot of lawyers. And I had received phone calls from people, Nerima, you need to see what's going on in Kahawa. And on that same day, they had arrested a number of young people, and we were basically told to go underground where the holding cells are. And Honorable Nerima asks me to escort her, and so when we were going, that's when I realized this thing. I've never seen so many ATPU uniformed with guns.
What's ATPU for someone who's not?
What's ATPU? I don't. So even by the time you're walking, through this gate, and they're like 50, 70 of them, and armed and wearing balaclavas. I'm like, where am I? You don't even feel like you're in Kenya anymore. And you go to this holding cell, and you're just seeing young people, and they're looking at you like, please save us. And even just hearing the stories today, I was just sharing with Melvin that the trauma, and indirectly, you're feeling it, we couldn't leave them. So for me, I understood Kahawa as this place where it's supposed to deal with terrorism, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and it's also supposed to deal with the big stuff. And then you're finding, kids, some more than 10 were below the age of 18. You're finding people who were just looking petrified and lost and confused in the cells. And that's just when we decided we can't abandon this ship. And that's how we ended up now having a database of over 400 young people.
Yeah, and also you started a campaign around that. We'll come to that. Irungu, how did we normalize the misuse of the Terrorism Act against protesters and young people as we've seen?
I think we have to go back to the military deployment in June 2024. I think that was the point at which civilian policing got replaced with military assets, military resources. And although the Law Society of Kenya went to court to try and limit the geographical application of the military on Kenyan soil to deal with the insurrection that had taken place, they were not successful. They were also not successful in limiting the time that the military would be deployed. And as we speak now, that deployment is still in effect, right? So you have to go back to that point and realize that because we did not arrest that, you started to see the violence that was there. Fast forward a few months and the emergence of special operations units. They call them multi-agency units. Units that are essentially not under the command of the Inspector General, nor are they under the command of the Director of Criminal Investigations, but they are essentially made up of units that are, essentially deployed in times of a state of emergency. You're talking about the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit, which is a unit within the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, which is a unit within the National Police Service. But you're also talking about intelligence, the National Intelligence Services. You're talking about military intelligence. And with the deployment still in place, the state was able to use a range of, assets and resources and services that have not been deployed in Kenya since as far back, perhaps in this format, since probably, I think, the state of emergency in 1952. Right? So you have to see this in a historical context. And I think, June and July were the deadliest months of the policing of the protests. And I think that's the context in which we began to see the use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
And before we continue this conversation, I think it's important for me to say that I did try invite government to this conversation. Up until this morning, I was talking to the handlers of CS Kipchumba Murkomen. I even sent them questions. I was like, if he cannot come, if I can not do a pre-recorded interview, here's a list of questions. Give me a response. And I got nothing. But what has the government been saying is a question. So they're saying that the use of the Prevention and Terrorism Act centers on the argument that actions of certain individuals during protests actually cross the line from peaceful assembly into organized acts of violence and distractions that meet what we've seen Melvin describe as the broad definition of a terrorist act. What do you think about this kind of argument, Nerima?
I've sat down with, institutions and people, and they would feed that back. But what I do see, that argument is saying that acts of patriotism, or even us within Article 37, or even the right to demonstrate, is being portrayed as dangerous. So POTA is formed to protect the public from terror. But what we're seeing government doing is using POTA to terrorize citizens. And that, for me, is not just scary, it's completely worrying, because even when you look at the profiles of the people who've been arrested, you're seeing a political push toward making sure you profile certain clans and tribes. And this is dangerous, because we're also talking about a 17-year-old, for instance, who should be doing Form 4 right now, and we're really struggling with him. We don't know if he's going to go back to school. We don't, because his classmates are already calling him a terrorist. He is already radicalized. He's like, I might as well embrace this tag. And so when you're seeing now people getting angrier, we are radicalizing young people to actually hate government. So even though they will say that, they were near a police station and they were acting in terror, blah, 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 evidence, don't have it. You're talking about using cell phones in terms of saying they were close to a vicinity. But even if you're saying someone set a police station on fire or something, there are other laws, even a penal code, even arson.
And we'll come to the kind of evidence that's being presented in court. And these are not questions I could ask, the people I interviewed, because they currently have a case going on. Irungu, when we get to this point where we are as terrorists, what does that mean for Kenya's democracy and the fabric?
It actually punctures the concept of us as a liberal democratic state or even a participatory democratic state, which is what Article 1 of our Constitution says. So it punches the rule of law, it punches the constitutionalism that we're trying to build in this country, and therefore, it takes us into a very authoritarian context, which ultimately will end in some form of anarchy, because ultimately the definition of authoritarianism is those who control the state get to break the law. There is a very short step between that and everybody saying, well, if you can break the law, so can we break the law. And that's what anarchy is, right? So I think, when we saw it happening within a few days, the Law Society, Amnesty International, a few other organizations convened an X space. And it was very important, that X space, as I look back, because there were a lot of lawyers that were beginning to become frightened about representing clients, right? Because they were like, okay, hold on a sec, this is now slightly different. It's not, unlawful assembly. It's not whatever. This is a capital, it could be a capital punishment charge. And we had to remind the legal fraternity that actually this was, in many ways, prosecutory overreach. It was investigatory overreach. And what that means is laws that are really important. Let me just give you, context for the Prevention of Terrorism Act. In 2024, over 1,000 people were killed as a result of acts of terrorism, right? 1,000 people. Now, if you think, 1,000 people since 1998. If you look at 2024, there were over 110 cases. That is twice the number of people who died in the context of violent policing of protests, right? So terrorism is a major threat to this country. We receive something like about $350 million from the international community to make sure that terrorism does not take root within this region. And we essentially have to hold that line, because there are people in the world that actually do not want our constitution to breathe. They do not want women to have rights. They don't believe in civil liberties. That's what we're up against. Now, essentially, to take that law and to use it against, in many cases, unarmed protesters was essentially to do a form of lawfare. And it dishonored the purpose of the law. And just to make this very clear, I have said this very directly, not only to investigators, but also to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. I have told them this was a disaster. It was a blunder and should not have happened.
What about the geopolitical implications for a country like Kenya that brands its very own citizens as terrorism, given the background that you've given us of how the world perceives terrorism?
We've also had conversations with the diplomatic community.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they have said to us is, listen, if there are 75 people who are facing terrorism charges and the concept of terrorist cells is between 3 to 4 people, that means you have at least 250 people and possibly 170 people who have not been caught yet. Now, that is a major declaration of a collapse of a state. Right? That essentially what that means is that governments that trade with us need to approach us very differently. They need to also issue travel advisories. All of this implication, I don't think, was in the heads of the people who applied these laws against the protesters.
Yeah, and Nerima, because you're at the forefront of meeting all these young people, let's talk a bit about the 50+ million Kenyans campaign, which shows that the average age of that person of the people who were arrested was about 24. How does this affect youth participation in Kenya's democratic space, especially now that we are slightly under 2 years to the next election?
Before I even talk about the participation, I'll talk about why we had to create the Bill campaign. We were reaching out to institutions that normally do this sort of stuff. And so, we've had Irungu talk about how the legal teams were afraid to touch these cases. We got the same vibe from everybody else. And we're like, we cannot allow to leave these people here. And so we had to put our necks on the line and fundraise and crowdsource digitally. And, fortunately, we've managed to fundraise up to more than 2.8 million on TikTok, on X, but the bills are still too high because we're talking about POTA. So even with that, even though we do get some out, remember there are still some who are in. We've not managed to get everybody out, and that's important because it goes to your question in terms of participation. So there are people who are still within cells today as we speak, and there are those who are out, but they can't work. There are those who are stigmatized and they can't work. So you've talked about 24. At that age, you're hustling. And so it means that you are now left with certain kinds of work that you can actually do. And oftentimes it's work that is informal. Because as soon as you use your ID, as soon as you use your fingerprint, they will trace you to a case where it's you, the Republic, against the Republic. And so this economically is super important to understand because we are cutting off access to opportunity for young people in a country that has a very high unemployment rate. Okay. Number two, now you talk about the participation now democratically.
Yeah.
Again, I already shared with you earlier what that looks like when we're talking about the kind of young people who are being arrested and the radicalizing that we're seeing. There's a disenfranchisement. And for me, the arguments I've been making, if the IEBC or democratic processes are not transparent, credible, and fair, forget having an election after 2027. Forget it. There's no way you're going to convince these young people that participate, get out and vote, and then that vote is rigged. There will be no peace in this country. That I can say very clearly right here, right now. And so we are actually at the brink of testing democracy. Because even when we look at our region, East Africa, we look at Uganda, we look at Tanzania, look at what's happening. They are learning from each other. So even when we talk about these agencies, there was a time that we were in town when Boni was submitting this letter in terms of the names of those who were killed during the protest. And I witnessed firsthand people coming without uniform, without cars. I mean, we don't know who they were, outside the Office of Interior. And there was a scuffle. When we went into the building and had a meeting with very high-level security officers or agents, whatever, the first thing the chair of the meeting said was, "What happened?" This is someone who is high up in security asking us what happened outside his office. And then looking at his head of security and saying, "Who are those people?" And his head of security saying, "Si wajui, sio wetu. Wametoka, unajua penye wametoka." I have never been so frightened in my life because it now means that we actually have a parallel system of power. Okay? And these agencies don't want to be held accountable. So for me, what we are witnessing is when civic responsibility is now tagged as dangerous and illegality is now tagged as constitutional. I don't want to live in a Kenya like that.
I just want to take you quickly. You said that there's a handful of young people who've left, who are let go, and the cases are still going, but there's still some who are behind bars. For what reason, and what's going on with them?
We can't afford their bail. And I'm looking at Melvin because Melvin should update us. She's the one who is constantly in the courts for all of them. And the next one we have is on the 27th.
Yeah.
But maybe Melvin can give her more.
Tom, just pass the mic to Melvin. Yeah. And Melvin, please tell us a bit about, just categorize. There's some who've left and others who are still behind bars. What's happening there?
The ones who are still behind bars is because some of them do not have cash bail option. They only have bond valued at around 300 or 200,000, which is too high. That means you have to have an asset that is valued at around 200 or 300,000. The rest, the cash bill is too high at 100,000. If we are to pay from the crowd fund, if we are to pay 100,000 each, it will be too much. We are not able to afford that. So we are trying to still negotiate. At this point, I'd call it negotiate, not even apply for revision, for courts to reduce the bails to up to, something like we've managed to pay from 15 going down. Some also were arrested as late as on 17th of September. And the latest, we were in court yesterday, and that is when the bail was reviewed. You also come to realize that a lot of these young people are people who are just on the street hustling. For instance, if you left Kakamega and now you're in Kirinyaga hustling alone, it means that for somebody who the court wants to be related to you to come to stand in for your bail to be paid, they have to also cater for that cost. So those are the challenges. We also have 3 Burundians who were in the country at that point. They are undocumented. And so it's been a long journey even getting the court to grant them a cash bail option, which we got eventually. But then again, we don't have relatives or people who can come and say that I stand in as a surety for this person to be released.
Thanks, Lobin. And Irungu, let me bring you in. And before I say that, I also did reach out to the judiciary to try and get a response, because there's also the concern that all this is playing on the corridors of justice at the courts. And now the question is whether the court system itself is siding with the executive or a different arm of government. What do you think of that argument?
So I think probably at the highest levels of the judiciary, there is major concern about the charges that were laid. And of course, the criminal justice system is, it's a system, right? So once investigators create files, and then the ODPP creates charge sheets, that has to go through a legal process now, unfortunately. There is discretion that judges can have, and I think it's important to continue doing the work that you're doing, Melvin, just to really try and get as much grace from the court as possible. I think something that perhaps we need to focus on is for many of the people who are going through this process, actually all of the people who are going through this process, they are innocent because they have not been proven guilty, right? So they are suspects, they are not convicts, they are not guilty as we speak now. The 3 of you are not guilty of anything, right?
But, but as you've had, some of them already being branded, they can't go to school. And
No, I'm coming to that. And I think it's important to establish that first. You are suspected of something. You are not guilty of something until a court rules in that favor. So therefore, anything that happens to you that presumes your guilt is actually unlawful. So I'm curious a little bit about why fingerprints on an ongoing case are sufficient for you not to get a job. I'm curious about, what is your status should you apply to get a visa to go abroad and you be denied on that basis? That is an unlawful process, right? So I think there's something around that I think we could perhaps push. Now, of course, it's difficult, right? Because these are jobs, these are donors, these are employers and so on. But I think there's an important point there that needs to be kind of teased out a little bit. The second one is that the impact that has happened to you, my sense is, is pursuable in a court of law. I'm not sure if you go through this process and you are released because the evidence is insufficient. So you are completely exonerated of these charges. I think the first step would be to get as many of you to file a class action suit to sue the state for wrongful arrest.
Yeah.
Right? And to seek damages. I know compensation is a controversial word, and I've experienced it. But compensation is a necessity for those of you who have had your lives disrupted, you have had your liberty taken away from you, and you have become stigmatized by something that the court may pronounce should not have been visited on you in the first place. Please keep that option open.
Yeah, and Nerima, maybe you can take us through some of the evidence, and I said I'd come back to this, that's being presented, because I'd imagine someone who's being charged with terrorism, definitely there should be evidence enough to match this. Is this what we're seeing?
No, it's not what we're seeing. You can barely see in. And at times you would think that there's been inklings of some of these charges being dropped. But I think it's a tactic to also keep us on edge, or I don't know, maybe you would know better in terms of what's happening there. But it's also things like, does your phone put you in proximity to where the events happened, to a lot of the witnesses actually being, say, mainly the police. There are no other witnesses. Imagine, in a protest of hundreds of people, it's only the police who know what happened. And so you can see that they don't have enough evidence and they're just dragging it and making it very difficult. And when you're on bail, you just miss one court hearing. Miss one. Simtajione hapo ndani tena. So it's dragging and draining, and you can see that's the tactic that they're playing. But in our minds, we know it's going to be a marathon, and
Are you prepared?
We're running that.
You're prepared.
Yeah.
Irungu, is this unique to Kenya that terrorism laws are being used to stifle dissent in this case?
No, unfortunately, now we're starting to see a wave of countries. I mean, I could go through, no less than 15 countries, including the United States of America, including the United Kingdom, that are essentially using anti-terrorism laws to criminalize pro-Palestine events and pro-Palestine rallies. So unfortunately, the world has begun a form of lawfare that is, using these laws against legitimate dissent, political dissent. Sometimes we tend to focus on the freedom of association, freedom of assembly and expression. But we actually forget that actually a democracy allows people to dissent against the government, right? To form a political party, to challenge government in an elective process. So I think the problem we've got is that there are too many countries that have gone down this route. But I think the downside, the upside of that is that each of those countries have produced new muscles among civic organizations. I don't mean NGOs, but I mean citizens have begun to organize, lawyers have begun to specialize, and what you're starting to see is the court has become an arena for contesting authoritarianism. And the streets continue to gather to protect. I mean, I think the UK, if I can just give one example, the UK has just been so inspirational in many ways. You've had demonstrations led by people in their 90s, in their 80s, who come out and say, we're not willing for our children's children to be persecuted or criminalized. We are going to come out. And these elderly people are being arrested and taken off to police stations. Or people with disabilities coming out and saying, you're accusing me of being a terrorist simply because I held up a sign that said, end genocide. I think there is something about being on the right side of history that will vindicate so many of people, the people who are going through this process, not just in Kenya, but globally. I think one last thing just to mention is this region has the notoriety of essentially having opposition presidential candidates in jail for treason charges, whether it be Kizza Besigye in Uganda, whether it be Riek Machar in South Sudan, whether it be Tundu Lissu in Tanzania.
What's happening in East Africa, actually, do you think, when you look at all this?
It's a virus. I mean, I just say it is a political virus.
We don't want to catch it. I mean, we're...
And that's why I think we have to have a Pan-African movement that said it is unacceptable for Bob Jage and for Nick Oyoo to be in a military prison just a few 1,000 kilometers from where we're sitting now. How is it possible that two citizens with a functioning state could have been held for 22 days without access to court, without access to their families, without medical access, or even consular access? What government do we have as Kenya that has no capacity to protect its citizens in other parts of the world? And actually not even other parts of the world, in neighboring countries. Let me put it that way. Right?
Yeah.
So I think this is a moment that we have to seize.
And I also think this is the moment to actually open up the floor for question and answer. Tom is on our roving mic, that's what we call it. He's going to be moving around the room very briefly to just take questions. But as he perhaps finds his first person, Nerima, a question to you. What would it take to institutionally or politically actually reclaim the law, Terrorism Act, for it to stay to its original intent, for us to prevent it from being weaponized?
Yes, there's actually, so I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, okay, fair. Try. I'll give it a try. Should I throw it to
Melvin?
Should I throw it to give it a try? Give it a try, and then we'll throw it to Melvin.
There is something the lawyers have been talking about in terms of taking something through parliament. And frankly, I don't know the legal jargon around it, but it has to do with POTA. So I'm going to...
Let me throw that to Melvin.
Yeah. Please ask the question.
What will it take institutionally or politically to prevent the Prevention of Terrorism Act being weaponized as it is right now?
So we are engaging, this is now something we've already started. We are engaging international law actors to go through the constitution itself and then the POTA to find the loopholes, like what was about, to find the loopholes that enable this instrument to be used against peaceful protesters and ordinary Kenyans and human rights activists. And another thing also is through, once we are done, we are not going to, what we say is that we're not going to circumvent or to try to interfere with the process of justice, because again, we want the people who've been charged to get justice, and this means them going through this process and being acquitted. We want them to clear their name so that the issue of fingerprints, IDs, and whatnot you can be able to clear. But after that, because we are certain that you're going to get the acquittal, after that we are moving to court. And once we move to court with the petitions, with the constitutional petitions, then now we move to parliament and to try and repeal this POTA. And that is repeal parts of it, because it has loopholes. For instance, when you say that, no, I won't say this, because I don't know who's here.
For what reason?
I won't say this because if I say it, it will give you, it will tell you what we as the defense might use.
Fair. Yeah. We don't want to compromise that. Thank you, Melvin. Yeah. Irungu. Tom, as you find your next, the first question, Irungu has a quick point.
So I think as you look at POTA, do not forget the Security Laws Amendment Act of 2014. Much of the power that has been exerted, the abuse of power that has happened over the last 1 year, is actually not under POTA. It is under the Security Laws Amendment Act. The extension of the term of pre-trial detention, the number of days that people can be held before being taken to court, that is under the Security Laws Amendment Act. The second one is the expansion of the powers of the National Intelligence Service to move from being an intelligence gathering service, which was how it was envisaged under its act, to essentially a operational service that has assets, has safe houses. They call them safe houses. They're not very safe for most Kenyans. But black sites, I guess, is what the Americans would call it. But places where you can detain people for long periods of time. Many of the people that were enforcibly disappeared, people like Billy Mwangi, people like Kibet Bull, you know them. Many of them were actually held in facilities that were under the control of not the National Police Service. So I think it's important as we look at the different legal frameworks that you take on, and I hope I have not spoiled your legal strategy again, but I think we have to call for the repeal of the Security Laws Amendment Act. And the good news is you have a sizable number of Muslims, a sizable number of people from the coast and the northeastern population who have felt the wrath of these laws. They will back your campaign and may even fund it.
Thank you, Irungu. So we're running about 10 minutes behind schedule. Tom, let's open up the floor. First question. Please stand up, tell us your name and who you'd like to take your question.
Hi, my name is Mutis Ndolo, and this question is mainly aimed at
Nerima.
Nerima.
Yep.
And it's a tough question. In the data pool, people who were arrested, I'm even panicking to ask this question. In the data pool of the people who were arrested on terrorism charges, and to what someone said in the media that people came from the mountain, does it tally? That's the question.
Whether it is targeted arrest towards certain communities, that's what he's asking, Nerima.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the majority.
So which proves to us that these are very political arrests.
Absolutely. It's profiling.
Okay. I hope you've gotten your answer. Anyone else? Tom?
Okay, somewhere in what I'm going to say, there's a question there. But what Nerima said about actions that we know are illegal and illegal based off of the current constitution that we have are being used against us as a public in terms of silencing dissenting voices. We've seen how they're trying to deter protests, how with the most recently proposed digital bill that the courts have now thrown out, where they don't even want us to use digital spaces to speak up on injustices. And Irungu gave a lot of examples in this scenario where honestly the three people in front of us, if you're released on lack of sufficient evidence, you should be exonerated. And I'm asking this as a Kenyan who feels helpless, not hopeless, but helpless. Because you've mentioned people who are still behind bars because we're trying to raise 100,000. And a lot of us in this room are privileged. If you put up something right now, you can raise 100,000 in less than 2-3 hours. So where are you struggling? Where are you struggling to raise the funds to meet bail for at least 2-3 people over the next weeks? Because we cannot fight machinery. We cannot fight systems that are corrupt. We cannot fight a parallel government in 2-3 minutes. But honestly, as Kenyans on this side, and this is a responsibility back to us, if there's something that any of us in this room can do towards getting 2 people out on bail over the next week, you said you have a hearing coming up, what do we need to do? Because a lot of the situations you've described make me feel helpless, but we're not hopeless, right? I can't imagine how difficult it is in terms of how their lives have changed. I mean, we're watching it as a documentary. We're seated here, and I'm physically shaking because I can't imagine what the 3 of you went through and how your life has changed because of one instruction. Let me leave it at that, as one instruction, and you're carrying those scars for a very long time. And if these are individuals who, let's say 80 people who've been targeted, if we don't do anything about it, the next time we're having this could be a conversation. It could be all of us in this room because we came for the session and we're all targeted. And you know, it sounds, the movies lie to us that you go to court and then in 24 hours you pay bail and you're home. You were away for days on end with no contact with the outside world without knowing what tomorrow is going to look like for you. So for those who are still behind the bars, it's very scary. So if we don't do anything now within our means and the privileges that we have, what does that mean for our future? We're already seeing with IEBC right now, we don't know where the registration desks are. We have people actively online pushing people like, I signed up here, I registered here, please go. Those are tactics. Again, there's a very blurred line between what is legal constitution and what is illegal. So it's using machinery to work in your favor. So like I said, someone there is
I got the question.
Yes.
So Nerima, what can people do to help the campaign or bail out those who are still behind bars?
Definitely fundraising. We had started and there was a lull because also Kenyans have contributed. I told you 2.8, we managed to support 285 people. And so when you're talking about bail as high as 100,000 for 38 people, that's close to 4 million, right? And there's also been cases of people taking advantage of goodwill and crowdsourcing.
How so?
Yeah, there was a case of someone fundraising for a particular institution just in between our fundraising. So we also pulled back a bit because we've also been getting attacks. And attacks that is, you know, sponsored by one and only to also make us look like we're not utilizing the resources adequately. So I'd say spaces like this have helped because the more we talk about it, the more people know about it. The bail campaign also has its own handles. And so on the 27th is our next case. And that one is a classic example of a bail being as high as 100,000. And we're trying to convince the courts to bring it down so that we bring it down to 50 so that we can double the number of people who can come out. Yes. So I'd say that we are going to come out and request for the public to support with crowdsourcing. Please follow 50+ million on Insta, on TikTok. We're everywhere. And just see the cases as they're ongoing. We give updates, but not to stop pushback
and the public knowing that these are not terrorists. Yes. And the labeling has been so strong, even when at one point we saw Kindiki actually saying that there are organizations and people helping terrorists. It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, Melvin just shared with me the poster that has the till number and the contact person who's actually accounting all these funds. I think what we'll do, we'll read it towards the end of this event and also share it on our post-event email. Tom, where are you at? We're only getting questions from the front. What's happening at the back?
Hi, everyone. My name is Billy. My question goes to Irungu. He wrote a very good book, by the way, called Dialogue and Dissent, which I think you should read. And no, I don't work for Amnesty, so.
And no way.
This is not a paid advert.
And he doesn't get a commission.
Irungu, one of the things you wrote there that spoke to me is you said that before 2010, our country was in search of a new constitution. After 2010, our constitution has been in search of a country that is a match for its values, which I think are just really powerful words. My question for you is, especially as a young person, well, not you, me, as a young
Guilty.
in this country, as a young person in this country, as somebody who has been young in this country and who has skin in the game, do you see a situation where the Constitution actually finds its citizens? And my second question is, how do you see the citizens also moving in the direction where the Constitution is going so that we intersect? Thank you.
Irungu, sorry you're catching strays about...
There's all kinds of things. I think the compliments are fast and furious, right? Thank you. So just first of all, just so that I can demonstrate that actually he's not getting a commission, the book is now free. It's on my website, irunguhoughton.org. You can read it there and do whatever you want to with it. Even print it and sell it, if that is useful to anybody. But I think the point that I think you're making, which is a great question, which is, the Constitution has protected itself in many ways, right? We saw with the BBI, Building Bridges Initiative, a real attempt to try and change the Constitution through unconstitutional means. And the Constitution was cited as a way of stopping it a couple of years ago. The book essentially looks at a small number of people. At that point, it was, I think we looked at 10 people. I looked at 10 people and just told their stories. So Boniface Mwangi's story of him growing up and how every institution failed him, not just the institution of family, but the institutions of social welfare and probational services, they failed him. And that forced him to become an activist. And the idea was to actually try and understand what produces activists with a slightly hidden agenda, which is I deliberately wanted for people to learn from others so that we could create a nation of activists, right? And I have it that activists can be found in the state as well and in business. Just to give you an example on this particular issue, I spoke to a very senior prison commander, and I said to her, what was it like to have 75 alleged terrorism cases brought to you? And they said, we had no choice because of the severity of the charges to put the suspects in with extremist offenders, right? But we knew we were doing the wrong thing, right? We knew we were doing the wrong thing, but by law, they felt that they had to do it, right? Now, I got something from that conversation, which is, tyranny does not attract. In many times, what it does, it actually repels, right? So it's good for, the three of you to know that there will be investigators, there will be prosecutors, there will be prison warders who are horrified with what was happening, right? And I think that's the spirit of, hope that I keep maintaining. The kind of power that we've seen in the Law Society of Kenya, right? Now, I'm young enough to know the period of Paul Mwite and John Haminwa in his early period, right? I remember that period, but you couldn't count more than 15 lawyers, including Martha Karua, a younger Martha Karua. You couldn't count more than 15 lawyers who were willing to do pro bono work in these very risky cases. Faith and the council have produced hundreds of lawyers who are willing to take action in any one of the courts in our 47 counties. And I think that's where the Constitution breathes, and that's where we get our hope from, and that's where the future essentially will come.
Thanks for that, Irungu. Tom?
Someone at the back? Come on, guys. And be nice. Be nice to Irungu.
Don't call him old.
I think Sophie has a question, so we'll give her another chance.
That's okay.
Thank you. This is basically to you, Irungu, because I feel like you have worked in the international community space for a while. So we see Kenya is party to the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights by the UN, and also the Association of Citizen Civil Rights Protection. And we also have a special rapporteur for the UN in Kenya as well. So where do these international communities come in, seeing as Kenya is party to these covenants and these agreements and these conversations that they supposedly had before we had all this craziness happening? So is there a way that, first of all, we can protect the special rapporteur so that he can be able to actually say what is happening in Kenya on the ground, including shoot-to-kill orders and just instigated violence on the citizens? Is there a way then these reports can be used to bring justice, not only to those who are living, but also to those who are dead, courtesy of state and police brutality? Is there a way to actually go back to the ICC? Can the ICC help us? Like, for example, East African community, what is the essence of that particular conversation? If we cannot even protect citizens within the East African community, can Kenya come out? Can we have our own team, as in African Union? I don't know, tell me. I've been asking myself, what is the point of all these international bodies and Kenya's relationship to it if they cannot come in and help us?
Yeah, and Irungu, as you answer that, how then do you balance that with the discussion around maintaining Kenyan sovereignty and avoiding external influence?
Yeah. So the issue of national sovereignty for me is not a difficult conversation, because essentially our constitution, by virtue of the fact that we have ratified that we are part of the international community, all the international human rights and humanitarian standards apply in Kenya, right? So the Baby Pendo plus 60 other victims case that has been just kind of like a real struggle for us to get through the court system, essentially is applying the International Crimes Act, but domestically in a Kenyan law, in a Kenyan court. And it's a really critical one, because essentially what we're saying is that crimes against humanity were committed during 2017. So it is important to get that sense. So the old constitution made this distinction between international laws and domestic, but now the Kenyan government is actually held accountable, can be held accountable on domestic soil using international covenants. That's the first one. Now, the second reality, as we've seen from Congo, Sudan, and Gaza, is that multilateralism is currently in the high dependency unit, or even should we just declare the ICU, right? So multilateralism and the power of, I guess, a community of nations coming to put pressure on a state that is violating its citizens' rights is very, much weaker than it was 10 years ago. And that's why for Amnesty, we have concentrated on building domestic, people-based, lawyer-based power to actually use the courts to essentially apply the Constitution. I think that's probably where we feel most comfortable. But the ICC, the International Criminal, the ICJ, all these mechanisms, the UN rapporteurs are important because they create an environment that ensures that if you want to go abroad, if you want to go to the UN General Assembly, then you will be viewed through a certain lens because the information has got to them. But on the UN rapporteurs specifically, they have probably given, I think they've probably issued 15 statements on Kenya in the last 1 year. The problem is they have to be invited into the country to do a fact-finding mission. And the state has declined to invite them. They have been asked so many times to do so. They are just not willing to do it. And I think that's partly because they have something to hide.
All right, Tom, maybe we can take about 2 more questions and then we...
2 more.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. And by the way, I should add, Ian, you get a gift for asking a question from Africa Uncensored. Obviously not me, but something better. Someone had a question here. Yeah, not me. Obviously not me. Anyone with a question there? Okay, we have a question here, and then the last one. I think Mariga will give us a bonus.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the session. I think it's been very informative. There's a question you asked. Odari Murabu is my name, from the great county of Kakamega.
So there's 3 of us. What is happening today? You know, guys, even before you ask a question, you know, at one point when I was at the back there and Tom was at the front presenting, and I realized we actually look alike. Anyway, back to you.
So I think there's a question you asked at the tail end in terms of how do we ensure there is no criminalization.
Weaponization of the law.
Yeah, weaponization. And I wanted to ask a question to the both of our very able panelists or speakers in terms of, is there an opportunity? Because I think sometimes we are so fixated on fights and refusing anything that comes from a place where we deem anti ourselves, that we miss opportunities there. From the very harrowing stories that we had, I think I picked 2 of the individuals who were arrested while one was going for supper, the other one was closing a business. Yeah? And there's a bill in Parliament, so that's where my question is coming. Yeah? There's one by Pasaris, I believe, I forget the name, that's the list, but it's around protests. So my question is there an opportunity there? For example, he said he was at work, he did not know there was a protest around that area. So when he was walking, he meets the police and he's caught up. So are there opportunities legally in terms of processes that are already ongoing for the citizen to exert their voice and fashion opportunities that create a conducive environment for them to engage in acts of protests? Like, for example, that one. Maybe there are draconian provisions within it which people can revolt against, but can they input? Because that's what public participation in my view is about. Is that a space where we can safeguard that space? That's my question. Thank you.
Nerima, then Irungu. I know, Nerima, you've been getting these legal questions. No? I'll give it to Irungu. Anything towards that question?
So you'll give it to the other non-lawyer?
Non-lawyer. Melvin. Any other lawyer in the room? Because it won't be me as well. Unfortunately, we don't Melvin, Sauti Sessions doesn't have legal fees, so this is pro bono.
I should have been in the panel.
Yes.
Yeah. So first I'll start with, once something like Article 37 we already enacted it, this is not something that is granted by the state. And it is not something that the state can or should be able to take away from us. Can I just ask him to repeat the part 4?
Yeah, just narrow down to the exact question.
Articles are supposed to be expanded by legislation. Yeah? So I'm saying, he was talking about there's a weaponization of the Anti-Terrorism Act.
How can we stop that?
Yeah? How can we stop it using the bill around the right to protest and how you organize around that? Because that is already ongoing. So that's what I was asking. Not in terms of changing, but in terms of how do you create spaces where you're so sure that if somebody went to protest, that law cannot be weaponized against him. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
It's fine. So first, we are allowed to protest peacefully and unarmed, and anything else that surrounds that. And I think largely we have done that. And for me, if you look at Article 37 and maybe you want to regulate it further, that will be, what you'll be doing basically is you'll be pinning it on us. Because in this article, everyone has a responsibility. That is I, who's going for protest, and the police force, that is the state, has a responsibility. Among the things that happened during that time that make it not peaceful and destructive is actually caused by the state. So for us, when it is going to come from us, the only thing that we can say is, or we can do, is to make regulations as to how the police should behave around the protest. Because we take it, I mean, let's look at 17th, when we went to the street. I want to leave, but also it's important to look at 2024 protests. This is 18th, 20th, yeah, and even before, just slightly before 25th. If you look at what happened, we were very organized. I went to the streets, I didn't have a pocket, my phone was recording everything and no one stole it. Then suddenly, after these 2 days, 18th and 20th, something was amiss. And people started complaining. Even those who had gone, the people were KFC, even them, they started complaining that something is amiss. I have been on the ground protesting and seen a group that is coming from the opposite direction and how they were behaving. And I have seen how we who are coming for the protest were behaving. So I think the responsibility that you're going to bestow when it comes to this article will mostly bestow it on the state. Because most of the violence and destruction has been caused by the state. It would be very unfair for us to start saying that, watch your tone when you're calling for accountability. Watch your tone when you're going to the street for something. I could be wrong, but there's really no other way for us to regulate what the people of Kenya can do around this article, but to take, and yes, I know we can do public sponsorship and approach Parliament through someone else who can help us sponsor these bills. But again, are you sure that the responsibility that you're going to give them in Parliament they can pass it? Because it's going to be on them. And maybe you can tell us, I mean, you talked of, instead of us focusing on the fight, is there something that you have seen that you think, sisi kama wananchi, we should also step back on when it comes to the protest?
Just very briefly, and then yes, sure.
I was about to give a very long speech, but I'll be brief. I think one of the things I'm thinking, because I've not seen, I'm just thinking, based on the stories I've had, one of the things I've heard about the bill is it's talking about have designated areas. Yeah? So you're able to say on Tuesday, we are protesting about Baraza Media Lab. Yeah? We'll be at X place. So it is easy for whoever wants to ensure those rights of protesters are enshrined and very well taken care of, to do it so that when him who was not part of a protest is sauntering to buy a meal, is not accosted. Because that area that has been designated is well in Angalia. No, I'm saying, can we think about
okay, yeah.
Yeah. I when I read it, and
okay,
whether to support or not.
Melvin, I'll just
I still want to, I don't know how much observation you put into this, but every time we are protesting, sometimes we say that we will be around. I mean, take for instance, 25th of June this year, we weren't going to protest, we weren't going for protest. We were actually going to celebrate. It was a memorial service for us. Tulikuwa dina mapastors, we had organized ourselves, and we had even mapped a path for us to go. By the time we are going to that path, a tear gas has been thrown at your feet. This, again, I take it back to the state responsibility.
All right, Irungu, just a quick one before we take a final question.
So the state has the obligation to facilitate protests. That is essentially the spirit of Article 37. They have an obligation not to maim or to kill protesters in the absence of a threat to their own lives or the lives of bystanders, right? But they also have an obligation to protect lives. right? So every life, the life of Bridget Njoki, the 12-year-old who was shot, I think in Murang'a, if I remember rightly, that she was shot in her home is a dereliction of duty. Somebody needs to be held responsible for that bullet that went through her home and caught her watching television, right? So that's the first point. I can't do the anecdote because we don't have time. The second part is that I think as civic organizers, as citizens, we can also begin to study how do we have successful demonstrations. Just give an example. I worry about, and I said this to Honorable Pasares, I said to her, this idea of designated spaces could end up with us being told to go to, let me give you an example, go to Gong Forest to talk about corruption. We can spend 2 days there talking about corruption. It will have no impact on the corruption we are trying to stop. We have to be able to picket offices. We have to go to Harambee House. We have to go to the Treasury. We have to go to the National Assembly, because that's where the power lies, right? Don't tell us to go to a forest somewhere and talk to people who are not there, right? So that's my fear about the designated areas. But can we become better at marshalling our protests? Yes. Can we ensure that protest observation is done? Yes. So one of the things that I think the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights did, and this cost them about 30% of their budget, is that they began to produce sit-reps or situation reports on each of the demonstrations. And to be honest, I kid you not, every report, I think they lost like about 10 million, 20 million, 50 million shillings of their budget, right, in the supplementaries. So I think it's really important for us to hold the ground in terms of the state is responsible, but yes, we can be responsible as protesters not to pick up, weapons, not to throw stones,
Thanks, Irungu.
etc.
All right, Tom, one last one. Wanjiku.
We've now got visitors.
Okay, thank you. Irungu, thank you for confirming to us that the prison wardens understood exactly what they did to us. They put us at the extreme. The block we were at was called violent extreme offenders. And just very quickly, it's just to show the trauma we went through. At night, when we were locked in, when we were getting out in the morning, we found an added mfungwa.
Warden? Sorry.
Mwabusu.
Okay.
Tukapata mwabusu. In this mwabusu, we asked her, it's quite casual in prison, not really casual, but we have this tendency of asking each other, why are you in? What are you in for? And we asked her, what are you in for? And she said, I went to get my hair done. History need normal sana na Kiswahili, but we have people who don't understand Swahili, so I'll say it in English.
And briefly, Wanjiku, please,
Yes.
we're running out of time.
So, and she said, I went to do my hair, and this hairstylist hit my head, like she was on her phone trying to get the style. And then the hairstylist hit her head, and this lady jumped on her, beat her ear off, akaingiza kidole kwa jicho akang'oa. Yeah. And we were seated with her, so we all stood up, left her, and sat on the other side. And the wardens, because her hair was untidy, and then she was sent to a cell, she went and bet a police officer, the lady police officer she met in cell, akamng'oa weave sewn in, kamng'oa weave. And they were like, you are too violent, we'll take you to Langata because you're in maximum prison. And then now we were there, and then the wardens are telling us, you must do her hair. So you're like, I don't want to touch her. And now Mariam had to do her hair, and we were giving security to her. So those are the kind of people we were with, and the trauma that we were extended to. So my question is, we had very senior people in this country on the NGO side that have money, and Nerima has spoken about it, that have money to support young people. And their voices are very strong and powerful, such that if they came out kututetea, it would be maybe easier. The people I saw on the front line were fellow young people, like in Nerima, in Melvin. When they reached out, when my allies reached out to my mentors, people who get keep, in these spaces of donors and everything, and there's like, what is the plan? Wanjiko is in, she's one of us. They say, hey, we leave it to Jehovah. That's what that person said. We leave it to Jehovah was ensuring I don't die in cells.
I'm going to need to interrupt here.
My question is, Amnesty International, where were you? You were not there. Wengine wakisema we leave it to Jehovah, Amnesty International, what did you say? Where were you?
That is to you, Irungu.
Yeah. So first, let me just start by apologizing. I don't think we did enough. I don't think we moved quickly enough. We don't have a large legal team, and we don't have large budgets. Funny enough, people think we are fairly wealthy, but we actually don't have that. I don't think we did enough still. I think the legal support that came from the Law Society was kind of reassuring for us, and I spoke with Faith and Manwa and a number of other lawyers, and they said that they essentially were going to deploy lawyers, but we didn't do enough, and you shouldn't have been in those situations. I think part of the challenge I think that we have gone through is that things escalate very fast, and then there is a moment where we're like, hiya, what do we do in this context? But I'm just thankful that there was the 50+ million campaign. I am thankful that you had Marvin. She's not just a lawyer, but I think she's passionately engaged. And after this, perhaps we can have a discussion.
Is there any kind of all right, you guys can pick this conversation offline. Nerima, let me just get your final word. Who gets to define who a terrorist is, the law, the state, or the citizen exercising their constitutional right to protest? Who do you think gets to define who a terrorist is?
I would say the evidence, because if I say the state, we are seeing what the state is doing, and it can't be the citizen because it's not their jurisdiction in terms of investigating, and we've seen how investigations have let us down. But what I do want to say, this is my closing remark.
It is your closing remark.
I would want to say that our security and our freedoms are not in competition. They depend on each other. And this is really important for even the state to be aware of. And I'm grateful that we are a generation that is living and pushing for the existence of our constitution. And so this narrative is important for us to continue to educate. As you can hear, the solidarity is key. We cannot leave these guys alone. Because tomorrow, by the way, it can be any one of us. Like they have shown us that it's anyone, it's random. That solidarity must stick. It must remain, even if it means calling ourselves terrorists, so that we remain in solidarity with people who have been unfairly charged.
Thank you, Nerima. Irungu, if the judiciary, police, and the executive, as we are hearing here, all play a part in criminalizing protest, where should Kenyans now look for justice?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I think I don't think the police, the prosecutors, and the judiciary are on the same side. I have done enough work with all of those officers to realize that each case has a potential for release. The case of Boniface Mwangi, for example, gave me a lot of hope that actually an evidence-based approach to prosecution would not sustain those charges. And we saw those charges being removed very quickly. So we have to continue to engage the criminal justice system. We have to engage it at the level of the police. We have to engage at the level of the ODPP. We must engage it at the level of IPOA. And we must engage it at the level of the judiciary, because that cycle is not going to wait. There's no other way that you can get justice in terms of the kind of issues we're discussing. The only other place is that in a couple of years' time, we each get to vote for a government that essentially reflects our values and reflects what we would expect from a government. That moment comes, it's a fleeting moment. We will be in that ballot box for about 2 to 3 minutes. That choice, or the absence of us making a choice, is what determines the next 5 years, right? So I think for those of you who are thinking about, voter registration, voter mobilization, voter literacy, civic education, I can't emphasize, I can't go much further than this because of Amnesty's role, but I can't emphasize more how important this is for this work to continue, right? Because that's the point where another justice can happen.
All right. Thank you.
And we have no position on the elections as Amnesty, except as individuals.
Okay. Thank you very much. Nerima and Irungu, ladies and gentlemen. You may now have your seats. Thank you so much for making time for us today. Now, we are not done just yet. For the next 10 minutes, I would like to introduce someone who is closing this event for us today. His name is Willie Oeba. He's an African poet who empowers young people to fight for inequality and foster justice through spoken word. He believes that activism through art requires people to stand in the gap between what is real and what is possible to respond to the challenges by expanding the stories that are being told. He is the East Africa Poetic Battle King for 2018, Human Rights Defender of the Year 2021, and a Ford Global Fellow. Let's welcome Willie Oeba. Just give it a minute as his mic is being set up, but hang in tight. Don't leave your seats just yet.
Are you happy to be here? Or you're here to be happy? Thank you. I'll be playing alongside Koni Muziki. Give it up for Koni. Give it up for Koni Muziki. Thank you. So tell me, how am I supposed to talk about peace if everything we have, we've had to fight for? If word is life, then what is living if freedom of speech ain't worth dying for? Tell me why it feels like we've been here before. What's the point of trying if life is looped in an unending cycle? There's no dignity in poverty. Tell me how money is the root of all evil. Because where I come from, it's either you die inside the house because of hunger or you're killed in the streets looking for a living. Where I come from, the cops kill for a living. So I am not a poet. My life is a poem. Because word is life and life is just a word, and that is how it goes. The day I stop speaking about the things that matter is when I will start dying. So dear death, don't kill me yet, because if you do, my mama will cry. And if she cries, now that will kill me. See, once a gun was put on my head, and at that moment, my whole life flashed in front of my eyes. Now that they didn't kill me yet, I live as one who has nothing to lose. Well, my mama almost cried, so I'm technically dead in the inside because I live in a country that kills its own citizens in a bid to collect more taxes. I live in a country where priests throw the weight of the world on the backs of congregants. If that's still not enough, they still hold more mercies. I live in a country where innocent kids were killed outside parliament buildings over broken glasses. I live in a country where the king is naked and lives in the glory of former past praises. I live in a country where half of the population skips meals, tough economic times, BS, but a bullet never misses. I live in a country where moms don't have sons, not because they never had, but because they are missed. Bullet wounds, trauma, my stomach ain't full, but I can stomach. Because I have seen the pain of a mother's cry, let me not talk about it. Because as a poet, some of the most powerful verses are in the words that are never said. Just like on June 25th, the young ones died trying to correct mistakes they never made. But they don't want me to write. But if I don't, then what happens to people who cannot hold the pen? Thank you. My name is Willie Oepa from Nakuru. Anyone from Nakuru? Aye. Every brilliant soul in Nairobi is a proud Nax vegan. Give it up for Nakuru people. I had to. Yeah. I am launching an album, dubbed in yellow paperback, on the 12th of December at the Kenya National Theatre. Please be there. Tickets go at 1,000 bob only. So this is my 4th album, but it will be a live performance concert. So this album, I was talking to Mr. Irungu earlier, it is inspired by my mom. So my mom used to vend in the streets of Nakuru. She used to sell bed sheets, cuttings, and she used to use a yellow paperback. Gen Z don't know the yellow paperback. Gen Zers don't. Yeah. But, so we used to live hand to mouth. But every time she stepped out, we were sure we would eat, Cindio. Because consistency is the only thing failure cannot keep up with. So she used to come with flour just enough for the day, sugar just enough for the day, but we were sure if she steps out, we will eat. So this struggle, it is a long one. And sometimes it feels like the more things change, the more things remain the same, but we need to keep on going, beat by beat, step by step, as we celebrate the short wins. As we said earlier, we're not where we want to be, but we have to appreciate that we are not where we used to be.
Sauti yako paza shujaa, simama mstari mbele wakuone, utakachosema wasikie, wakati ndio sasa itumie. Usiogope kudhulumiwa, usiogope kurekebishwa, ndio mwanzo wa story of glory, nothing but glory. Fungua roho yako, weka wazi mawazo, tenda wema nenda zako, wasikupenda chana nao, ni shauri yao. Fungua roho yako, weka wazi mawazo, tenda wema nenda zako, wasikupenda chana nao, ni shauri yao.
Haya, Baba, we ni shujaa. Receive your flowers, Baba, tinga vile inafaa. Mkono mbwekse Baba, handshake tulikata. Hello, shika simu Baba, tuna sita. Ni nani ataandamana 77? Wafuasi wanauliwa Baba, wakija kukuona. Ida analia, Mama Winnie amepoteza Baba. Hello, ongea simu Baba. Hello, shika simu Baba, ati handshake tulikata, ati handshake tulikata, ati handshake tulikata. Serikali ina hema, ina bondo, mepiga hema. Kuna cyber crime law na mengi ya kusema. Ongea Baba, umenyamaza sana. Mabinguni kuna mswada pia, hawezi bonga. By the way Baba, from today freedom of speech imekuwa crime. From today imeniuma sana. Gotea Webasinia, mwambie niko nyuma, but no sooner. Vijana hoe, hii ni big blow. The king is gone, but long live the king. Well, justice system imejaribu kureverse roles. Sasa wanaita judge my lord, alafu God is my witness. Simuliona walikuwa wanajaribu kuuza airport Nilikuwa na jani wanajoke wakisema Africa is our business. Huku Sakaja akitaka Nairobi iwak. Nerima, hiyo ni priority kweli mayouth wakiwa jobless? Juu uchumi imekuwa mbaya bro, hakuna Kenya ina move, hata wasusi ya wasongi. Watu wa piercing tu ndo wanatoboa. Uchumi imekuwa mbaya, mpaka ukifanya mabaya malipo si hapa. Wendy, uchumi imekuwa mbaya, Sauti Sol wamekuwa the top, uchumi imekuwa mbaya mpaka Alusa sasa amedecide ku go topless. When youth depressed, una kazi na serikali inapea kazi wenye wanafaa wawe retirement. So mbona una tense na hata mood ya worry? Hakuna hata pesa ya kulipwa peanuts, squeezy kila mtu anauza njugu. Au viongozi si wenzetu, wakati wa kura ndio watakumbuka kutuita mandugu. Na serikali ingekuwa inajali what we say, then parliament kungekuwa na headphones na sio speaker. Mchana unalala bunge na usiku wanataka night allowance, ndio wananiita play sleep. Hope ni rare. Ironically, sometimes sisi wa Kristo ndo tuko na chuki sana na our favorite verses ziko in the book of Romans. Wasikudanganye na words, body language can tell. Misplaced priorities, hakuna maji kwa mfereji, but masa ya kura wako very busy kutap talent. Walituahidi stadiums, lakini kwa grounds vitu ni different. Na before we need a fellow Kenyan, I must tell you what it is to be me. Kwa nchi kids die every day. In their defense, the police always have something to say. Forget about the money. Tuna spend so much time kwa barabara zimetengenezwa twice their normal cost anyway. The same SUVs bought by taxpayers' money are given way kwa the same roads matatus have to pay. During rain ya igava, huyu the youth amekuwa one bullet away from being a hashtag. Talk is cheap. Fortunately, citizens cannot buy that because wako $1 away from the poverty line, bro. IBC ndo iko na price tag. Our moms wako one demolition away from kulala njaa to kulala nje. Na huyo makanga ko one police stop away from kulose another finje. There's nothing to smile about when I know I am one stray bullet away from being a statistic. Na degree ni makaratasi tu, now to put food on my mama's table. Through poetry I have to be sarcastic. Nasema life ni short, Remi na siongelee kinyasa. Na akaunti ya mwananchi ni empty kama akili ya mwanasiasa. The president is talented in the art ya contempt of court. The law is very clear, his conscience is not. So dear Mr. President, ulitafuta kura na ukapata. Sisi tulipata rais lakini bado tunazidi kulipa ushuru. Kwa nchi mwananchi analipa standing charges kwa kila kitu ndio MP apate sitting allowance. Kwa nchi hakuna kazi, mayouth kila mahali inabidi wamejiandika kama floss in mauano. Do you know the leaders of tomorrow are dying today? Ni guts tu hakuna, but everyone has something to say. Manifesto hope hazina, our mothers have resorted to pray. Na watoto wa CBC nani atawafunza hiyo A? Tumechoka, even Rihanna doesn't want you to stay. And we can see vile pesa inapotea treasury kama witness wa ICC. Pesa inapotea kama nywele kwa kichwa ya cabinet secretary wa ICT. Droppings of power ndio zina excite hawa, vitu kama chess cars ndio zina fascinate kina Opio yule wandae. Sijuzi muliona small fish akibreak the law anakujiwa, but big fish akibreak the law Nurdin Haji. Juu pesa ya kisima waliiba, and that's the damn truth. Sudden death is viewed kama spoiled votes, that's the sad truth. Hakuna food, shelter, matter, clothing, well that's the naked truth. Mayuta wana fair kwenda job interview, politician kenye na msumbua mafuta ya ndege, well that's the plain truth. Life ain't easy, that's the hard truth. It's not about sagging, drugs then create my wasted youth. Kwa nchi mashef hawezi afford ile food wana cook. Domoptician unalipo hawezi atapiga look. Well kill sin to see God, atamtoe tithe aje ticket ya heaven and nunului my book. Itakuwaje cry za tajiri ni intellectual, lakini cry za maskini kwa masikio justice ni kelele. Itakuwaje mna believe in me na nikicheza kimimi mnashikwa na kiwewe. Itakuwaje unaninyima opportunity ya kupata kazi, lakini tu kwa club unataka nipewe. Na effect ya nguvu ya thao inafika malinduru ya mnyonge iwezi fika. Ballot box na DSTV zinafika malidisha iwezi fika. Watoto wanalala njaji, wewe ulikunywa na pesa ya kula na vizuri unajua pombe iwezi lika. Wanasiasa wanadanganya ni kutriki. Ukisaidia rafiki yako pesa yako, unapoteza rafiki yako na pesa yako. Na inspiration imekuwa tricky. Hata some of our girls wako disenfranchised. Najua wengine hapa mnatumia miadarati ndio wawe women of substance. Jesus alibetraywa na kiss. Nyinyi mko hapa mnajichocha juu mlipewa hug. Wajinga nyinyi. Give it up for Koni Mziki.
Willie Oeba.
It's hard coming after him.
Yeah, like, what do you say after that? Like, I'm a journalist, but my wordplay comes nothing close to that. Tom, pleasure having you here.
Yeah. Awesome audience. You guys should give a round of applause to your side. Great question here. It's a really nice. I'm sure you would have been elsewhere doing other things, but great to have you here, man. For your patience, to Ian for starting Sauti Sessions, to his team that has been running around for I don't know how many hours. A round of applause to them, Nabaraza Media Lab, Willie, Justine Wanda, and lastly African Censored, and again you guys for having us here. Asante sana Ian.
Yeah, thank you. For Tom as well. Tom has been so busy working on a couple of documentaries for African Censored, and he also presents the big picture. And I really tried convincing him to do this with me, and I appreciate that he took the time. Thank you so much.
You did try hard.
But then, yeah, I did. But then I think we might need to talk to our fathers. Something's happening here.
You guys agreed with that, and I was like, yeah, bro. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'd like to thank all our partners. First of all, Siasa Place and Nerima Wako for coming on board. I really needed the support to work on the documentary that you just saw, and Melvin and Nerima did not even think twice. What's the story? What's the pitch? Let's do it. And we did it. And that documentary, I managed to film it with CJP Films, which I always brag about because it's a crew that's made up of 90% of women. All of them you can see right here. I also filmed this with a couple of colleagues from African Censored as well, and part of the footage you're seeing there came from them as well. Thank you so much, Tom, and your team. And of course, Baraza Media Lab for creating this space for creators and journalists like us. Let's clap for them as well. And then to you, let's clap for yourselves as well. Finally, one crucial question that came up is how can we help the people who are still held behind bars? Melvin has just sent me which I'll read out right now, but we'll also send it to your emails. Don't worry about that. If you want to send a little bit of money to help them raise bill money, the buy goods till is 6658137. So the till number is 6658137. Just one last time, 6658137, and the account will read, Melvin? The account will read Philip Murimi Njuki. Whatever you can, it will definitely go a long way. It will keep as many people out from going through being forced to plait hair of a criminal, someone who gouged someone's eyes, just like we've had. That was quite scary. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We have about 20 minutes before we close down for the venue, so take your time to interact. I appreciate you very much. My name is Ian Wafula.
Sure.